All right, let's just jump right into this explainer because today we're going to completely shatter a fundamental assumption you probably have about corporate well-being programs. We are looking at a really fascinating data set spanning 109 countries, 21 languages, with well over 1,000 responses. And honestly, what it reveals is just how deeply we misunderstand what's actually happening when we try to take care of our teams.
You know the drill, right? We naturally assume that practicing mindfulness is just this isolated meditation bubble, a universal one-size-fits-all fix for personal stress. You're overwhelmed, so you open an app, meditate for 10 minutes, and boom, you're fixed. But yeah, the data shows this highly mechanical view of human beings. It's deeply flawed.
Check out this number. The data reveals a highly specific, positive Pearson correlation of 2269. Now, with a critical value of just 0.058, this easily meets the reliability criteria. So what does it mean? It proves that choosing to practice mindfulness isn't just a random personal preference, it is a profound signal for what spiral dynamics theory calls the Turquoise value system, a psychological stage focused entirely on holistic collective consciousness. But, and this is absolutely crucial to remember, this is correlation, not causation. Mindfulness doesn't necessarily create this systemic worldview, it reflects it.
This data brilliantly illustrates a paradox. Turquoise dominant thinkers strongly prioritize mindfulness, right? But interestingly enough, they actively deprioritize physical activity, showing a negative correlation of minus 0.1002. So for these integrative thinkers, mental health is absolutely not about optimizing the physical body like it's some sort of machine. You just tune up. No, it's about systemic alignment. It's about literally dissolving the boundaries between the self and the world. So here's where it gets wild. Think about the crucial implication here. When you simply tell your team to practice mindfulness this week, you are actually triggering 3 entirely different parallel psychological reactions. A turquoise thinker, they see conscious participation in collective awareness. A green dominant thinker, someone who really values harmony, they see an avenue for relational care and community connection. And your orange dominant achiever, well, they just see quantified recovery. To them, it's a biohack to manage stress so they can, crush their next KPI. And this exact divergence builds into what we call the system reaction. When you strip away the systemic depth of a practice like mindfulness and frame it merely as a personal productivity hack, well, the holistic turquoise connection is completely severed. They disengage. Sure, your HR dashboard metrics might stay totally green because, hey, people are still logging into the app, but the deep integrative purpose of the whole program, it's entirely lost. Which triggers this sort of downward cascade. It starts with that reductive framing, which leads directly to the emotional disengagement of your most systemic thinkers. Now, they'll probably still participate, just to check a box for management, but that results in a silent drift. And that's the scary part. This isn't some loud, explosive failure on your balance sheets. It's a quiet, insidious drift that just slowly fractures the collective well-being of your organization. So how do we stop this drift? Well, first off, we have to stop putting band-aids on isolated symptoms. We absolutely must shift away from a medical model of treating individuals in isolation and move toward a systems model. Basically, this means using rigorous mathematical frameworks to map out the invisible wiring of human psychology across your entire company. We are literally talking about calculating the algebra of conscience. Sounds intense, right? This algebra of conscience unlocks an entirely new paradigm for dynamic management. In the old world, the mechanical world, you focus entirely on the action itself. You fire an employee, you save a salary, boom, end of equation. You treat humans like cogs in a machine. But in the new world, the systemic world, you focus on the profile. You calculate the ripple effects of your action across all those different psychological value systems we just talked about. Let me give you an example. Just like with the meditation apps, this proves the exact same management action can spark totally opposite reactions. Take unpaid vacation, for instance. To a tribal purple mindset, it's accepted as a sort of ritual sacrifice that actually increases team bonding. To a green community mindset, it's an act of solidarity to save a coworker's job. But to an orange achiever, taking away their money puts a massive stop sign in front of their career. They'll reject it, feel blocked, and probably quit. Literally, the exact same action saves one company, but totally destroys another. If you don't map these value systems, you are flying blind. You become completely oblivious to the butterfly effects happening right inside your organization. Let's look at layoffs. The first order effect is obvious, a massive spike in fear. But the tertiary effect, the one a spreadsheet is never going to predict,
That scarcity triggers latent biases. It can unintentionally spark ageism, setting off a literal generational war in the break room as people desperately look for scapegoats. And all of that ultimately leads to a total crash in leadership legitimacy. And this is where things get really cool. Brings us to a massive emerging 2026 trend: AI vibe coding. This is where users literally instruct large language models like Claude Code or Cursor using plain, natural language to build apps without any traditional coding. The SD Navigator dynamic models we're analyzing today built exactly that way. It's a tool that literally simulates these psychological butterfly effects. It predicts the trajectory of fear, trust, and well-being before you ever hit send on that company-wide memo. The math behind this kind of empathy is just fascinating. Because the algorithm surfaces patterns across thousands of correlations, it maps the psychological state vector of the company. And crucially, its objective function actually penalizes you, mathematically penalizes leaders for destroying the mental health of your team. By weighting employee fear almost as heavily as direct financial costs, this model forces you to consider the human element. But quick warning here, you have to use spiral-literate AI prompts to avoid your standard first-tier biases. When done right, it literally forces leaders to be warmer, proving once and for all that a toxic workplace is, quite simply, mathematically inefficient. Look, if you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, please remember this. Your organization is not a machine. It's just not. It is a living, breathing organism, and you cannot fix an organism with a wrench. You need to read its state vector. Whether you're rolling out a seemingly simple mindfulness initiative or a massive corporate restructuring, your intervention is going to fail if it ignores the complex biological reality of your team's value systems. So I want to leave you with a final thought today. A bit of a provocative question to chew on. What breaks when mindfulness stops being a bridge to collective awareness? And think about this. If an algorithm can mathematically understand the holistic soul of your company better than you can, are you truly designing well-being frameworks that preserve systemic integration? Or are you just isolating people in their own little personal calm bubbles? Definitely something to think about before you design your next workplace initiative. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.